know what is she? White Fence, Maravilla, Lomita. They've been around a lot longer than us, you know? It's cool. We got our own clique, strong clique. Finally getting into our own, you know? Getting respect. Our clique, our barrio, our families, that's all we gotta say. Simón, when we were kids, belonging felt good. But having respect, pues that feels even better. You know, la primera lives through us, eh? It gives to us. It is us. We make it, carnal. We don't fake it, we just take it. Cause it's la primera, se. Always has been, always will be. Órale, órale. Welcome to the clica, carnal. Yes.
Guys, I don't know about you, man, but I am so excited today for the special guest that we have tonight, guys. It's going to be a great show. I'm very excited watching this little episode of American Me. I mean, it reminds me so much when the show first came out, and now knowing that one of the main characters on that show is actually going to be on our show today. But without further ado, Big Sean, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Good. How's the weather over there in Virginia?
Rainy.
And Big Benny, I know that over there in Temecula. Tell us about the weather over there. How you doing over there?
They're fine. It's just a little cold. There's a lot of snow up in the mountains.
Well, good. Hey, guys, well, listen, we have a special guest, and I know, Benny, you're going to do all the intros, and you have the questions for him. We're excited about that. But before we continue, I just want to make sure that all of our guests, people that are watching our show today, understand that today we're going to hear the Mundo story. We have set questions that we want to ask him. Now, next week, for the first time ever, Mundo will actually be live on our show. He's never been live answering questions from the audience or from the listeners, people that are watching the show. So next week will be the first time, next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. Make sure that you log in at 6 p.m. This will be part 2 of today's episode, but next week he will answer all your questions that you may have. So without further ado, Benny, it's all yours. Do the intros and let's get to it, man. Let's hear our special guest tonight.
Well, we got Ramon Mendoza, who's also known as Mundo. He's a former street and prison gang leader who was a member of the Mexican Mafia, also known as EME. Welcome to the show, Mundo.
Hey, welcome. Welcome, guys.
Bienvenido.
It's an honor.
Mundo, let's get started. So, who and what is the Mexican Mafia? A lot of people think that because it says Mexican Mafia, they think it's from Mexico. Explain to us what it is.
Yeah, the Mexican Mafia is as American as apple pie. It was spawned in the U.S. At DVI, a dual vocational institution, which is a youth facility at the time that we knew as Gladiator School. A lot of the youngsters, when we're being state raised and going through the California Youth Authority system, that many of us ended up at DVI. And in 1957, a 17-year-old gang member from Hawaiian Gardens by the name of Güero Buff, Louis Flores, came up with the idea of spawning the Gang of Gangs. And he named it the Mexican Mafia. There were between 15 to 20 co-founders or members that joined at that time. He meticulously picked the cream of the crop, the leaders of the respective street gangs from LA, from the LA area. And one of those members was from Bakersfield, Richard Reese. And the whole idea at the time, I know you hear all these romanticized stories about how they had this big plan to take over all the gangs and the drug trafficking. In the beginning, it was more controlling prisons and enjoying the creature comforts that inmates covet when they're doing time. That's all it was. Their muscles. They started doing just that, controlling the rackets inside the California Youth Authority at DVI. Many of them were stripped away Some were sent to San Quentin, where they mixed them with adult offenders, and the attempt was to deter them from their evil ways. And instead of that, they just continued on. So uh, to what it is today. And as we journey through this interview, you'll get some of that as it happened through time.
Okay. Mundo, why are you wearing a mask?
Good question. I think you should know that I actually dyed my eyebrows white just for this interview, to throw everybody off, so that people think I'm an old guy. But seriously, I'm wearing the mask because 40 some years ago, after I had defected, cooperated with the authorities against my former Confederates, I was a marked man, greenlit, was released from state prison in 1983 for a couple of homicides that I was convicted of, Mexican Mafia related. And the U.S. Marshals picked me up and decided to relocate me. And they gave me a new direction in life, a new name, uh, completely new identity, new location in this country. Uh, and my life, as I knew it before, was completely altered. So since then, I've surrounded myself with many, many people. And many of them do not know anything about the old who Mundo was. They don't know anything about Mundo. Today, the vast majority of these people that have entered my new life with my new name um, would be on blast. I don't want to put my face out there because of the collateral damage that could possibly result from people seeking to get revenge, for example. So, contrary to popular belief, I don't live in fear and sleep with one eye open or anything like that. Where I'm located, I'm totally fine. And but whenever I come on a venue like this, uh, my mama didn't raise no fool, so I'm not going to have some youngsters in my part of the country having target practice on my old behind just because I was dumb enough to put my face out on YouTube. So that's the main reason. I'm exercising. These are my personal security options, and this is what I prefer to do to keep myself alive, and uh, and that's the reason. I'm glad you asked, Benny.
Hey, Street Legends TV, welcome to the show, brother. Bienvenido. Go ahead, Big Sean.
Hey, Mundo, thank you for giving us the opportunity to ask you all these questions and whatnot. Hey, how does one join or get into the EME?
Well, you actually have to sign up like you're enlisting for the military. No, I'm just kidding again. Uh, no. Every member when he's every member was state raised, meaning they began doing time as a youth offender, and as they amass their criminal resume by the crimes they commit on the streets, by the way they perform in youth incarcerations, and when they graduate to the adult authority, it's a process. It's like climbing criminal Mount Everest, I call it. When you get to the mountaintop, that's when you're sponsored. Somebody in the organization, the way it took place in my days, is somebody would have to raise their hand for you. They'd have to sponsor you. We called them our padrinos, our godfather. And whoever this person was, he would he would get you familiar. It was like a courtship. You knew that they were considering you for membership just by the things they would tell you. Uh, their business, such as who the enemies were, uh, if they wanted you to do a hit for them or do some other criminal activities behind bars, uh, they wanted to see if you were willing, if you were a willing participant. When you're courting a woman, you kind of know that when the time comes that you ask her to marry you, she's going to say yes. You're pretty confident of that. Well, the same thing with the fellas. When they come to you, when the sponsor comes to you and asks you if you want to be a made man, he already knows what you're going to say. I already know that, yes, I want to be a member. And that's how it happens. They circulate your name to all the prisons. Back then, every prison would receive your name, and you had three votes that you could give. You could say yes, you could refer to the sponsor, to the padrino, which was the same as a yes vote, or you could say no. One no vote was rejection. You could not be made with one person saying no. So that's how the process worked. They wanted somebody who was willing to kill for the organization at the drop of a hat. Not able to kill. Anybody can pull a trigger. They wanted the worst of the worst, and that's how they handled it.
So is there like a typical type of gang member, for lack of a better term, that they're looking for, and what they're looking for in their recruitment? Any specific type?
The more violent type back then is what they coveted, what they sought. The run of the mill gang members were not going to get in because they wanted people who would never demonstrate cowardice. Nobody has a crystal ball, so you never know who's going to turn in life. I mean, that's any organized group, any criminal group. You can't predict it. Sammy the Bull, all these guys that have turned through time. I mean, nobody has a crystal ball, and so you seek out the most violent inmates, the guys that are more lethal, the leaders, the guys that have leadership qualities. And as I said earlier, you build a criminal resume as you go along. And those guys stand out, the evil ones, even the police officers. You guys know who these guys are. I think one guy told you, David, at one time, Widow Sherm told you one day he's going to be the leader of the Mexican Mafia.
Yes, he did.
So all these youngsters, they covet. This is what they want to be. They have aspirations to be a made man, a big homie, what they call it. So that's how
Hey,
that.
Mundo, following up on that same question, so there's actually a godfather or somebody that sponsors them into the EME?
Yes, that's the padrino. The godfather
Okay.
is not to be confused with the head of an organization. The
Yeah,
Mexican Mafia did not have a godfather, a captain. It was very loosely organized, and you had a lot of influential people. But when I refer to godfather, I'm talking about a padrino, a sponsor,
a
the
sponsor. Yeah.
the person who sponsors the member that's being recruited is a padrino. So a padrino is in Mexican parlance is a godfather. So that's what I mean when I say this is my godfather. Big Mike from Flats and Matt Korean from San Diego. Those were my sponsors. Those were my padrinos. So they're the ones that raised their hand for me. They're the ones that circulated my vote to all the my name to all the prisons, and then everything came back positive, thumbs up, and I was made.
Hey, Mundo, following up on that same question. Now, when you watch American Me, you see Puppet, and I know Sean's going to laugh at this one, and you see Little Puppet. Now, is a padrino responsible to taking you out if you don't perform accordingly, or how does that work? Or
In the
was that just American Me?
That was just American me. In the
Okay.
perfect world, in the perfect criminal world, yes, if somebody goes south, the padrino would love to have the opportunity to take that person out because it's a reflection on his bad judgment, so to speak.
Even if
Uh,
it's a brother, even if it's his carnal, his personal brother.
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yes, especially. In fact, in real life, there was a member, Vito from San Fernando, who killed his brother, Güero Psycho. He killed him because Güero Psycho had gone south. What I mean by gone south, he got in trouble with the fellas, misrepresenting himself, burning them for drugs, and so Vito was given the assignment to take him out, and him and another member went together to his Silmar residence, and Vito executed his own blood brother.
Wow. Está
So that
cabrón.
was the ultimate demonstration of loyalty right there. The demonstration of loyalty, ongoing loyalty to the organization, to the EME, is who you've killed lately. Not. I mean, you killed somebody 6 months ago, and you're not gonna live on your laurels. You have to keep on. So they don't care what you did yesterday. They don't care about non-fatal attacks and assaults. They care about 187s, murders that you are continuously committing. That's your demonstration of ongoing loyalty. So now killing your brother, I mean, come on. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than that.
Hey, Mundo, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood, your upbringing, your school years?
It's funny. I was an altar boy. In fact, one of my books is Gang of Gangs from Altar Boy to Hitman. In fact, the posters behind me, the red, white, and green of that book. And this isn't an infomercial or anything like that. But I was an altar boy. From being an altar boy, I remember I liked the Beatles. I liked the Beach Boys. I was a square from Delaware, as they say. When I went to junior high school, I was a brain. I was in the smartest classes, and but I had some dysfunction at home. I rebelled against my dad, my stepfather, and by rebelling against his authority, by extension, I rebelled against all authority. Was seduced by the street. I joined the local street gang in my area, Barrio Nuevo, VNE, in Boyle Heights, East Los Angeles, and the rest is history for me because I started doing time, juvenile hall, camp, and it was just an escalation of from petty crime to the ultimate. I committed a murder. I killed a rival gang member at the age of 19, and that was my making my bones, and that's when I made it to the big time. I call that the point of no return for me.
Hey, Mundo, I have a quick question for you. One of my questions is when you became a street gang member, how old were you? What barrio was it? And were you jumped in? How was the initiation process back then?
Yeah, I was a teenager. I was jumped in the projects where I was born, the Strata Courts housing projects, and the clica or the clique that I was from was the tinies. So all the guys from the tinies were all the same age group, and on the day that they jumped me in, it was in an alley, which was customary. One of the older members from an older clique. He was in charge of uh, of supervising the. I think it was a 30-second jump in, if I recollect properly. He advised me to hand over my wallet, my wristwatch, and anything I didn't want to lose when in the jump in process. So I handed him everything, and as I was handing him the stuff out of my peripheral, I saw one of the guys coming up to hit me. I kind of sidestepped them and turned and hit him, and then they descended on me, kicking me, hitting me, and pretty much beat me until Little Ray, the older member, he said "Ya estuvo." In other words, that's it, and that was the signal for them to stop. He held my arm up like a victorious boxer, even though I got my butt whipped. He held my arm up in the air, and everybody came and hugged me, and embraces from everybody. Welcome to the neighborhood, and these types of scenarios are played out everywhere. That's the way you are initiated into a street gang. I don't care if it's San Diego, San Francisco. That was the process. That was the initiation, and you felt good. You could be bleeding like I was, but you feel good because you made it, man. You're one of the carnales. You're one of the brothers. These are my fellow street gang brothers, my extended family. So these are the guys you're gonna kill for. These are the guys you're gonna live for, and so your natural family is is one B now. Your street gang family is one A, and your natural family becomes one B, and that's how it works until you become a prison gang member. Then those dynamics change. But that's how the initiation worked for me. Uh, evolved from pretty quickly, from a naive kid enjoying being a brain in school, and then rebelling against dad, taking my act to the streets, started doing time in juvenile hall at the age of 14, and by the age of 19, committed my first homicide. A rival street gang member from White Fence, Bobby Loco. I killed him with a machete and nearly severed his head off in the process. Something I'm not proud of course, but that is what happened.
Hey Mundo, this is for the correctional officers that are watching the show. You hear the term green light. The vato got green lighted. You hear his name is in the hat. That's another terminology that you hear. Tell
Yeah.
us what the green light, the vato's name is in the hat. Tell us who orders it. Does somebody actually uh, is there a committee that says, hey, sabes que? There's five of us that voted, put the green light on this vato. Tell us what the green light, the name of the hat,
Yeah.
and who
Yeah.
actually orders it and how is
Okay.
it done?
Well, first of all, before we get on, before I continue on and answer directly your question, you mentioned two slang words there: in the hat and green light. And I do want to mention something. Benny Cruz, the other gentleman here on the panel that's interviewing me as well. Benny, you put out a book, uh, 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 the Ball Street. Is that no? What Black Ball? Black Ball. The book it's available on Police and Fire Publishing. And I got to tell you, I am very envious of you because you put. I mean, I like to write books. I have 5 published books, and and uh, and I never thought about undertaking what you did. You wrote a five or you put together a 500 and some page book on street slang terms, prison and street gang terms, and those two, I'm sure, are in that book. In the hat and green light. When you green light somebody, if it's a street, if it's a street gang green lighting somebody, that's uh that's probably for an offense. I say most of the time it's an offense committed on the streets. It's offensive to a gang. But now, when green light is used in conjunction with the big homies, with the Mexican Mafia prison gang, um, it's it originates with the fellas, with the members, for an offense that's unpardonable. In other words, you don't green light somebody for execution. You don't target somebody for execution unless he's done something that they consider egregious or unpardonable, something that you cannot return from. So that's the green light. If you were to give a definition, it means to target someone for execution. Most of the time, it's execution. Nowadays, I hear that they target people for just checking them. In other words, a beat down. I don't know. I mean, in my days, once you green light somebody, they're done. They're we're gonna send them to Brazil. That was an expression we had back then. Sending somebody to Brazil. They're in the hat. I think the Aryan Brotherhood guys. The first time I heard that expression was the AB guys would use that phrase in the hat. So that was just a term. I can't give you the literal meaning for it, but it was an expression used in prison, which denoted being on the hit list, being targeted or green lit, targeted for execution. So those are interchangeable. Whether you green light somebody or you place them in the hat or on the hit list, on the en la lista, as we say in Spanish, it all means the same. Send them to Brazil, mandalo para Argentina, uh, send them home. You know, all these were code words which denoted targeting somebody to be hit.
Okay, Mundo. Well, thank you for mentioning my book. It was a big task.
Okay, I get a commission, right?
It took me 8 years to put that thing together.
I know. Wow.
Another question for you, Mundo. You're on the green list. So how does it feel to be on the green list? Who authorizes it? A lot of people think that it has to come from Pelican Bay. Is it true? Does it come from Pelican Bay or can it come from any institution? Federal?
Any member can place a green light on somebody. It doesn't it doesn't need to be approved. In my case, because I cooperated with law enforcement, I mean, you know, no, I'm not trying to be funny, but I mean, even Ray Charles can see that somebody like me, you you're done, you're toast, you're green lit. It's a lifetime open contract that can be taken by anybody. You don't even have to be a Sureño, a Southern California street gang member. You can be anybody on this planet that would recognize me and want to take me out, just because I cooperated with law enforcement. The street gang world is the Mexican Mafia street gang world is very, very different, I think. I see a lot of people. I'm very concerned for people that I see on YouTube that put their faces out there, because I mean, I would never offend them by telling them, "Hey, look, you're a dummy, you're a dumbbell for doing that." No, I would never do that. But gosh darn it, I mean, you're putting not only yourself in danger, you're putting your circle of people, your kids, your ladies, your family, uh, whoever you're around. If some knucklehead decides he wants to do something to you just because he thinks he's earning points, you're a target. You're a target for these guys. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in.
Okay. Mundo, how much control does the EME have in the California Department of Corrections, federal prisons, and on the streets? How much control do they really have?
Enormous, enormous. It's to the point where staff pretty much, I don't want to say they look at it like a fight that they've lost or anything like that, but I can tell you that they use these guys to control their prisons to a great degree. In my times, they did that a lot. They would utilize us. What I mean by utilize us, they didn't conspire with us, but they would look the other way on little things. And I say little. If we were drinking Pruno, for example, which was an offense, you should be detained and written up. They would overlook that and make little deals with us. And I'm not going to throw any correctional officers under the bus, but I remember who they are. They would make deals with us that if we kept our brothers in line, they wouldn't bring the goon squad in. If they bring the goon squad in, there's going to be violence anyway. So they knew that we would police ourselves. And so anytime you have a big homie running a yard, well, that empowers the guys even more to keep the violence down. Today, because of the volume of business that's conducted on the yards, the drugs that are being sold, the cell phones that are being used to communicate with street and all of this, it even comes into play even more. I mean, I hate to say that, and I know that most of the officers that are in the prisons, whether it's federal or state, they'll deny it. They're supposed to deny it, but these guys help keep the murders down. So violence is what generates a lot of attention to a prison or to a prison system. So you have to curtail or control your violence. So in a way, you're making a pact with the devil up to a degree. You're not letting them get away with murder, but you are kind of looking the other way, so to speak. So yes, their proliferation of the Sureños are the heart and soul of Mexican Mafia members' control. Without the Sureños, I think one of my co-authors, Rene Enrique, he mentioned in one time something about they would be paralyzed. They would be paralyzed and like a paralytic, unable to function without Sureños. So Sureño gang members are the blood, and all these guys are aspiring Mexican mafia members. I hear people say, "Well, why don't the Sureños take over and overrun them and all that?" It doesn't work that way. These guys all look up to them. These are their heroes. These are their father figures. They want to be OGs. They want to be made guys. And so has nothing to do with fearing them. It's the status that comes with being a Sureño and someday becoming a made man.
So they do have a lot of control over the street gangs.
much control.
Hey, Mundo, does La EME ever put out a green light on law enforcement?
You know, in my years of functioning, I don't remember us ever doing such a thing because it was an unwritten rule to not go up against staff in that manner. Now, that doesn't mean that we didn't have violent encounters. That doesn't mean that MA guys never kill staff members, because it has happened. But the unwritten rule was that we would never target law enforcement because it generates unwanted heat, whether it's a street cop or a prison officer. So I think that rule of thumb is in existence even today. Now, that would not hold true for a dirty cop. If you have a dirty cop that goes south on the guys, on the fellas, well then he would be treated like anybody else. You know, you betray them, they're going to come after you. It doesn't matter whether you wear a uniform or not. But in my time, I have never experienced an occasion where we greenlit uh, uh, law enforcement. There was a close call. There was a crazy guy. Most of us were crazy, but Alfie Sosa was one of a kind. He had a list of law enforcement people he wanted to take out, and at the time I was working undercover, and I blew that up. I kind of threatened him, not personally. I told him, if you carry this out, you're going to have to answer to the rest of the fellas. They're going to make a decision based on what you did, and I can tell you right now, they're not going to approve you going out like the Lone Ranger and taking out anybody in the law enforcement community because we have a lot of activity going on the streets, and we don't need this kind of heat. So he looked at me. He knew what I meant. That in other words, that he would be targeted to be killed. So it was an implied threat, but the way I handled it, I think the message got home and he kind of tabled it and never brought it up again.
Hey, Mundo, can you explain carnival talk?
Yeah. Carnival talk is a manner of speaking in which code words are employed, code words that only a circle of people are familiar with. For example, let's say that you and David and Benny and I are in a lockup unit together for X amount of months or X amount of years, and we develop certain code words, and those code words that we assign to different individuals or different scenarios, only we know what those words are and what they mean. So when we're communicating, whether it's in a kite, whether it's in the visiting room, relaying a message to somebody, we're talking in a manner that can't really be decoded unless you're part of our inner circle that knows exactly what is meant and who we mean when we say certain things and mention certain names. So no FBI decoding system will ever know exactly what we're talking about. Uh, any smart gang investigator can overhear or read and say these guys are saying something, but they won't know exactly what we're saying. So carnival talk is just that. Uh, a collection of phrases and words that are put together that only a circle of people really know. And of course, that that can only be for a certain period of time because if if you continue with that same phrase or those same words for too long, well then others start knowing what the meaning is. Like earlier when I said in the hat and green light, those terms are not temporary. Those terms lasted. And look, now today, I mean, from way back then, using the in the hat, using green light, using all these terms, they come they evolve to the present time. They're still used. So those were not temporary terms. Those were long term or permanent uh, terminology.
Hey Mundo, when you were in St. Quentin in the 70s, in the 60s, 69, the late 60s, was the EME already using Nahuatl, Were they using that? Because now we hear that a lot of them are becoming pretty proficient with that language. And that could be
You know,
also part of the carnival talk, right?
yeah, and there are guys. I know in my time there were some of the guys that started assigning themselves Aztec names or Toltec names.
Mhm.
There was a handful of guys, uh, and it wasn't mandatory, it wasn't required, anything like that. And I chose. I fancied myself to be a contemporary gangster, a modern guy. I didn't have time for all that false cultural stuff because it was phony. It was phony. No, nobody. Here we are killing our own people, and then we're talking about brown pride and all this. What it was really, it was a warrior culture. So it agreed with the mentality of the warrior. I mean, Ghetto called himself Quetzalcoatl. Uh, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but he was an Aztec god, and
God.
he had uh, the shield on his eternal war shield tattooed on his
Mhm.
chest. But he also read books on Adolf Hitler. He was a big Adolf Hitler fan, and because well, he hated blacks, he loved, and but the warrior mentality is what this was all about. And then so all that later in years, I know it did evolve to where many of these guys actually learn the language. They can communicate, and a lot of that was for coded purposes. It took a while for staff. Some of the staff members later, I understand, became proficient, and they learned now what, and they learned how to write it and read it, and of course the decoders uh, can figure that one out instantly. But none of that. I do not believe that it's anything that's required. But it's something that the guys that were into that enjoyed when they were their cultural awareness, so to speak. It was uh, it was something to pass the time.
Hey, Mundo, when you hear the term spreading the EME gospel, what does that mean?
I first came up with that term. I'll be honest with you. It wasn't anything from my time frame or anybody else. It wasn't law enforcement. It wasn't a newspaper. I brought that up when I wrote The Gang of Gangs. I actually wrote the book in 1980. It wasn't published till later on. And spreading the Emic gospel was what my way of communicating uh, the foundation that we established in the mid 70s on the streets. Mostly, we began in LA. We started replacing drug pushers, guys that were people that were selling dope. We started replacing them with our dealers. We had a big Mexican connection from south of the border. Today they call them cartels. Back in my day, they called them families. The Araujo family was Chuy Araujo was the head of the Araujo family, which would be present day. They would have called it the Araujo cartel, and that's like the precursor to the Arianos. They have their own history, and so uh, our job was to replace dealers and install our own people. And so we did that by brutal force. Murder became our number one tool, and we accomplished that with. It was like drinking. It was like you and I. It's like you going and buying a soda pop. That's how easy it was. People that resisted, that did not want to sell our dope, it was easier to kill them than to break their leg or give them a beating. We take them out and instantly replace them with somebody else. We had guys in Central and Northern California that had paroled to that part of the state. And so part of spreading the Emic gospel was not only instilling fear in the local gangs, but also distributing the drugs and beginning the operations of selling drugs throughout the state of California. Even though Northern California was the people up there, the gang members or the gang population was controlled by the Nuestra Familia prison gang, we had people all over Northern California that were involved in selling dope. They didn't care about winning the hearts of gang members. They did was make sure they were making money from the sales of dope. So all of this was part and parcel of spreading the Emic gospel, and that was the foundation for what evolved and what you see today.
Mundo, when you hear the word limpiando los libros, I say that in Spanish because you see that correctional officers read that when they're reading the kites or they're going into a cell and they find all of a sudden they find a huila and it says cleaning the books. What does that mean, cleaning the books?
Well, I can tell you what closing the books means. Okay, that might be kind of like a misnomer there. Closing the books is a term that has been used during different periods of time in the history of the Mexican Mafia when bad apples, when you get informants that turn, when you get too many bad apples, what you do is you do internal house cleaning. Internal house cleaning means you start killing off the guys that have a killing coming, and you close the books, which means there's no recruitment until the guys are satisfied that they've done a complete job. Once they are satisfied that okay, we got the bad apples out of our midst, then the books can be reopened and recruiting can resume. Well, you hear a lot of that through time, through many decades. You hear people when you hear them talking about closing the books. I remember when the FBI tapes in the 90s, you hear the guys, Weddle Shyrock and those guys talking about they were recruiting some new guy, and everybody was telling them, we can't recruit him because the books are closed. And then he convinced them to reopen them just to recruit this one guy, Pelon Maciel. And of course, they yielded to him. He was a very good lobbyist. They made him a brother, and then they closed the books again. It's they they can do whatever they want to do. It's their rules. They can break them. They can stretch them. They could do whatever they want because you know the reglas or the rules are theirs to break. They made them. They can break them.
Hey, Mundo, kind of a personal question here. Uh, when you were giving your first hit, your first kill, how did you feel? When was your,
When,
when was your first
yeah,
hit?
okay. My first hit as a street gang member, if that's what you're asking, I can get into both. As
No,
a street gang,
I'm talking more when you were an MM member.
when I was an M member, I can tell you that I was already of the mindset to I already had a street gang 187 under my belt, a murder, and then I had other events that I got involved in that I can't talk about for obvious reasons. But when I performed my first Mexican Mafia hit, there was a sense of pride, a sense of pride and accomplishment. Uh, I guess if you're and this is a twisted analogy, but if you're in the war and you're fighting against an enemy and you take down, you blow away an enemy troop, soldier, I'm sure there's a sense of accomplishment, when you do it. I don't know. I don't know how they feel or think, but that's how I felt. I felt a sense of pride, a sense of accomplishment, and they got easier as they went along. Uh, it got to the point where I never lost any sleep, never lost any sleep over killing anybody while I escalated my evil doings. As I continued to kill people inside prison and then back out on the streets, uh, it got easier, a lot easier.
Mundo, going back to the kind of the same thing, what was your state of mind after getting the orders? How do you prepare? How do you prepare for your target?
No, nobody. Okay, with Mexican Mafia members, you don't get orders. You already know who's supposed to be hit. I mean, it's not. Remember, there's no rank and file, so nobody's overseen telling you, "Hey, Mundo, go hit this guy." You already know who your enemies are. You already know who's on the lista, on the green light list. All these things you already know. If you're in combat, mutual combat with a rival, you already know. So, you know, again, the orders, as you're expressing it, those are doled out to sureños today. Those are the guys that receive orders from the big homies to kill somebody. In our day, the only thing that resembled an order is if the only example I can give you is that, let's say we're on the streets and somebody from Folsom sends word out, hey, this vato is no good. Uh, Make sure you take him out. You know, I never received such an order, but there's others that have, and it's business as usual. I mean, it's not a big deal once you're part of that. That comes with what you're doing as a member. I know it's I know a lot of people when they hear me talk like this, they think, "Oh man, how could you even sleep at night? How could?" Because that was part of who we were. That was part of our world. We, Sailor and I, for example, there were at least two occasions, two that I remember distinctly, where be, before we killed two different individuals in two different locations, um, we had to hurry up because we kept reminding each other that, hey, the Dodger game starts at 7:30. We want to be there for batting practice. So that determined and dictated the how fast we were to kill these two individuals because we wanted to get to the game in time. So who cares about the fact that we're taking somebody out? You know, we did our thing. We took them out. We drove in a hurry to Dodger Stadium. Uh, Bought our Dodger dogs. Started munching away and laughing at the expression of our victims when we took them out. So, you know, you're very desensitized at that point. You know, it's business. It's strictly business.
Hey, Mundo, when you left La EME, how did you feel about losing that power that you had?
Um, you know, there was no. By the time I got to that point, I uh, I was ready. I was sitting in the Kern County Jail. I uh, I was actually ready to go do the rest of my life in prison. I was facing two murder charges, two executions of two rival gang members, and then something dramatic happened to me while I was in the jail cell. I uh, I met an old man who was in his early 80s who would come every Sunday with a other group of church people, and I became his project. And I respected the old man because he was trying to help people, help them save their souls. And you know, I I didn't care about God. I didn't care about any of that. But I cared. I found myself caring about an old man who was genuine and genuine about me and concerned about me. You know, that he would pray earnestly with his bony fingers coming through the bars and holding on to mine. He would pray, and I'd look at him. He'd close his eyes. I would close my eyes, and then I'd open one eye to kind of check him out. And then, I mean, the guy was for real. Like, he was really fighting for my soul. And it's crazy how it happened because I was ready. I was ready to. The gas chamber did not phase me. I would die with honor for my brothers. Life in prison was like a family reunion. They would give me the red carpet treatment when when I would get convicted and return to prison. So now there was no reason for me. I wasn't afraid of doing time. I wasn't afraid of any of this. But this old man got to me and got me to thinking about my victims. That was number one. My victims, how they must have felt when I killed them, how their families must have felt. And then after that, the next hurdle was forgiveness. That was the hardest one. How could I be forgiven? How could an animal like me be forgiven for what I had done? And that was the biggest hurdle. And this old man told me, uh, you know, you don't have to do it with me. Do it in the privacy when we're gone. Do it in the privacy of your cell, just you and God, and unload to Him, and He'll forgive you. So I took that. I thought about it. I found it hard to believe, and I did. And one night I got on my knees. I cried. I prayed. I felt something leave my body, like something physically leave my body. And I thought maybe that was just the emotion of crying and feeling how I felt. And later somebody told me those were probably the demons that were that were exiting, that were leaving you. And so something happened. Something powerful happened after that. And you know, so never was there even a thought. I knew the influence I had. I knew how evil I was. I was a designer of evil. All the guys that are alive today, that know the Mexican Mafia active members that are alive today, that knew me back then, they know exactly what I was about. I was a front lines guy. I wasn't a guy that stood back in the sidelines. Front lines, organizer, killer, all the things you want to call me. In their world, that represents honor. But you know what kind of honor that is. That's a gang type of honor. I had all those accolades. I had all of that, and so now I had to change all that. So losing power, as you asked me, I know it's a long-winded answer. Relinquishing power never was a thought. I mean, if you ask me to think about it and go back, I can go back and think. I know how much power I wielded, how much influence, with street gang members, with my fellow brothers, and all that. Uh, and that's the way a lot of these guys are like that. They have that kind of power, uh, you know. And so losing that power, I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful there's a God that just took all that away and slapped me down.
Mundo, when you hear the word fear, what does that mean to you? Fear.
Fear has different connotations, in at least in different parts of my life. When I started doing time in juvenile hall, for example, there was fear in my heart. I feared the unknown. I had never done time before. I saw a black inmate rape a white inmate. Now, the color of their skin doesn't mean much. And the only reason I'm bringing it up, because I'm going to fast forward in a bit and tell you what was going on behind bars. But I remember witnessing that, and I remember thinking, I looked around and I saw nobody assisting this guy, and their demeanor made it look to me as if he had this coming to him. He must have done something wrong because nobody's lifting a hand to help him, and so the guy raped him. And so from that point on, I decided, you know what, this will never happen to me. I would fight. I would fight till the end for that. I mean, it did scare me to see that. I was afraid. So there's that kind of fear. I remember. There's uh, as I became state raised and started doing more and more time. Street gang member, California Youth Authority, engaging in stabbings, assaults, race riots. My evil doings began to escalate. Uh, then there was a different kind of fear, and it's the fear of losing my status. A gang member that's evolving and becoming more and more evil, his his status begins to grow. He's growing. He's accumulating, as I mentioned earlier, his criminal resume, and that's based on status and performance, evil performance, assaults, murders, etc. So once you climb that mountain and you're getting to the mountaintop, the pinnacle of your status, the fear of losing that status becomes something overwhelming. Nobody wants to lose that status. You want to make it to the top. And that's where when a guy gets green lit and he's on his way to the top and he does something stupid, whatever it may be, something that is worthy of a green light. Many of these guys, if they get stabbed or if they lock up in protective custody and they're sitting there thinking about the loss of status, they have a hard time dealing and coping with that. because that's all they knew. That's what defined who they were. That their status. That would be the equivalent of somebody going to Harvard, becoming a successful attorney or a corporate guy, and then getting involved in something that ruins his career. You hear about those kind of guys committing suicide because it's so overwhelming, the loss of their status, of what they accumulated. But with a gang member, it's a similar analogy. Uh, and the fear of losing your status, it becomes a different type of fear. Of course, the fear that the prison gangs spread on the yards in prison, or on the street, like the Mexican Mafia has the street gang members under their thumb, and there is a fear. These guys, I don't think it's a trembling in your boots kind of fear, but it's a fear of, okay, I can be a tough gang member, and if I don't report with the revenue that needs to be given to the representative that's handling the monies that need to be reported, I know that I can be a target to be killed. I don't want to be killed, right? I'm a tough guy. I can handle things, but who wants to be green lit? So consequently, you cooperate. You're part of the Sudeño group. You're part of that clique, of that circle, and in effect, you're like buying an insurance policy. And there's an element of fear there, the fear of dying. You don't want to die. You're not afraid, but you're not stupid either. So once again, there's just different types of fear, different definitions of fear, and the two that I went through and experienced graphically was the initial fear when you're entering the system, and then you start getting hardened as you go. Things get easier, and then there's the fear of losing your status.
Hey, Mundo, what does the word fear mean to the EME?
What's that?
What does the word fear mean to La EME?
I don't think that word is even in their vocabulary. They are fearless, and I mean that. It's kind of like suicidal. It's very suicidal. I can't think of using that word in conjunction with the M is almost like an oxymoron. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit them. And again, I just revert back to what I just said of the fear of losing your status. They don't want to lose that. They've reached the mountaintop. Who wants to relinquish that? So if it's fear of anything, it's fear of losing that status. They're not afraid of doing life in prison. They got cell phones. They got visitors. They can run things from the inside. Fear of death. I mean, in California, Governor Newsom has done away with the death penalty. They're not going to get gas. The Ayala brothers and guys like them, they're not going to get gas. As long as California is a liberal state, that will never happen. So there's no deterrence. Not that the death penalty. Uh, I believe that the death penalty does not deter homicide with hardcore guys. They're going to continue in Texas. They continue doing them, but what it does, it eliminates the people uh, that these people will never commit a homicide again. So it's a punishment that is not enforced. So well, once again, I don't even look at fear and the eme being used in the same sentence, unless it's the fear that's derived from from them. In other words, people that fear them and the repercussions and what they could do. The black hand, as they say, has a way of reaching out and touching people. Uh, I think they committed the first gang hit on death row when they killed a guy that screwed up on a mass murder on the streets. They killed the first guy in ADX at the federal prison in Florence. It was an internal hit when they stomped Tati Torres to death. Um, so they have a way of getting to their targets, no matter where they're at. And if they really put their mind to it, nobody escapes the reach of the black hand. So they the fear is connected with them because they're the ones that spawn it. But as far as fear and them, uh, they don't even. I don't even think they recognize it.
Hey, Mundo, tell us about the movie American Me and how did the MA react to it?
Yeah, American Me was it was intended from all the people I've talked to who were connected with the movie and everything. It was intended to deter kids from there was a lot of supposed to be a lot of deterrence. The way they arrived at it, of course, by telling the story of characters. It was based on characters, true life characters from the Mexican Mafia. Uh, the producer took creative license to portray some events, even though it was a movie of fiction, and it tells you right at the beginning, that it's a movie of fiction. These guys were so graphically real that even to this day, people, they'll use examples from the movies and they'll say things like, "Oh, Joe Morgan was responsible for Cheyenne Cadena's death." Well, they're saying that because that's the way it was portrayed in the movie. There is nothing in that movie as far as events, and I've analyzed it from beginning to end. None of those events were true. None of those events happened. Okay. And so anybody who tries to say, "Oh, well, this guy did this, and according to American Me, that's what happened," that's baloney. That was fiction. But now the characters, it was based on characters. Like the three major or principal characters were Edward James Olmos played Cheyenne Cadena. Uh, William Forsythe played Joe Morgan, and Pepe Serna played my role. In the beginning of the movie, it shows the three of us together, Joe, Cheyenne, and myself. The three of us were never together on the streets, never together. Cheyenne was never together with Joe or with me. Joe and I were, but not the three of us. So all of that is just once again, it's just characters that are brought to life, and people who don't know any better, oh, they take that as the real deal. But everybody in the loop, everybody in the know understands that no, that this wasn't something that happened. But the mistake that Edward James almost made, again, he was a director producer, was he portrayed Cheyenne Cadena as a young man being raped at juvenile hall by another inmate. And so he crossed the line when he did that because Cheyenne, that was a blasphemous portrayal. And so that what resulted from that were three individuals that were technical advisors to the movie were killed. They were executed on the streets as a result of that. Uh, all three of them died, ironically, in the Big Hazard Ramona Gardens. Anna Lizaraga is her was her last name. Uh, Charlie Brown Manriquez and Rocky Luna. Yeah, all three of them within a 1 year period were killed uh, in the projects by the Mexican Mafia for their connection to the movie. And then Edward James Olmos was extorted. He actually paid X amount of money. I don't know the exact amount, but I know that he did pay some money to the Mexican Mafia, extortion money, uh, because so that he wouldn't be killed.
And a follow-up question, tell us about your show on police and fire publishing.
Well, it's great. This is the first place that I'm going to reveal this, but today's January the 31st, and my last episode is going up or went up yesterday. And on February the 8th, I'm going to bid farewell to the viewers, and I'm pretty much done putting up episodes. They invited me for a 1 year period. The 1 year ended uh, January 31st, and so it's ironic that you guys had me on on the same day that my last episode. I'm going to leave the last 3 or 4 up along with other content, but all my narrations, except for those last 4, are going to remain. Anybody that wants to view what's up can go to policeandfirepublishing.com. And also it's a continuing website that will promote and market books. There's interviews there that David Contreras contributed. They're still going to remain up. Pete Bollinger, the publisher of my books, he'll still be contributing. My movie, the Mundo movie, based on my book, The Gang of Gangs, will still be up. Things like that. And thanks for bringing that up on their behalf. They were gracious enough to have me on board for a year.
Mundo, in closing, one of your I've listened to almost all your episodes, if not all the episodes. I love listening to them. I've listened to them once, twice, 3 times. Sometimes you always have a closing. And today's closing, I know what it's going to be because it's in your heart. It's witnessing. Give us a closing on our show today, and we look anxiously to having you next week. But give us your closing.
Yeah. Well, first of all, as I evolved in those episodes, my mission statement was to educate and train, not just law enforcement people, but people who wanted to know how their minds ticked, how the bad guys, how the criminal mind ticked. Many of you were family members that wanted to know how your loved ones, why would they want to do the rest of their life in prison, for example. So there was an education and training component. There was a deterrence component, letting people know the futility of that life. And then at the end, of course, there was the witness component. As a born again Christian, I believe strongly that God's word will not come away void. No matter what, no matter how tough you think you are. I thought I was tough at one time, and He brought me to my knees. At some point in your life, if you're a hardcore criminal, there is an avenue of forgiveness, just like there was for me. And so my prayer is that the Lord will bring you to your knees. Those of you who are lost, those of you who think that your soul is committed to evil forever, just because you're doing life in prison. Remember the old saying when you were locked up, because we used to use it all the time. You can control my body, but you can't control my soul and my mind. And so, in that regard, remember Psalms 139. In Psalms 139, he basically talks in that chapter that you can run from God, but you can't hide. And with that in closing, I want to thank you guys for having me on board. God bless you guys, and I look forward to joining you next week and taking any questions that people may want to throw at me. And Dave, I know if somebody throws a dumb question, you're going to moderate it. Yeah,
No doubt. Yes.
yeah, yeah. And the rest of you gentlemen, I really appreciate your questions and the fellowship. Uh, it's good stuff, and I look forward to your other content as well.
Thank you very much, Mundo. Benny, any last words for Mundo? And Sean, any last words? We'll start with you, Benny.
Well, just thank you for being here. I know I know you don't do this very often. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Thank you.
And,
Go ahead.
and thank you, Mundo, for doing this. This enlightening.
Benny, you said at the end you were going to let me throw the answer to a question. you, that's okay. But I just wanted to throw this in closing. Um, when I hear the term respect and honor, this is thrown around a lot. I see it on YouTube, and I cringe when I hear in the when I hear it mentioned in the context of a gang member. Honor and respect. It should not even be in the same vocabulary, because honor and respect are military heroes, are law enforcement people, who put their lives on the line on a daily basis, our first responders, our school teachers. I can go on and on ad nauseum as to who our heroes are worthy of respect and worthy of honor, not a gang member. And I don't mean this in a super derisive. I don't mean this with venom. It's just a fact. You know, when I hear honor and respect used in conjunction with a gang member, I cringe because they don't belong in the same sentence.
Mundo, once again, thank you very much, my brother. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. You'll be answering a lot of questions from a lot of our viewers. Thank you, brother. God bless you. And wherever you're at, be safe. And we pray for your safety, brother. God bless you. Thank you. Gracias. Guys, what a show, huh?
Yep.
What a show. I mean, I've seen every one of his episodes, but I'm telling you, today, I learned something new. Things, I mean, like I said, I've seen all of his episodes, but today, I mean, certain words, certain things that he said, man, they made so much sense. Benny, any parting words before we go ahead and leave? Don't forget, viewers, next week, 6 p.m. next Tuesday, Pacific Standard Time, Mundo will be on for the first time ever answering questions live from our viewers. Benny, last words.
Well, what can we say? I mean, it was a great interview. I mean, having Mundo is just, it's top, you know, and he's really a good guy. And you know, it wasn't easy getting him on the show.
Most definitely, yes. Any last words, Benny? Any last something else that you wanna mention?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Big Sean.
Real informative. I really liked what I heard. He was straightforward about everything that has happened to him in his life, and it's a bit of an eye opener, you know.
Yeah, most definitely.
But other than that, you know, close out again. Live tactically and be safe.
Don't forget to live a purpose-driven life. You're never too old to volunteer. You're never too old to continue on with your life. Our ending will be greater than our beginning. Thank you, and God bless you. We'll see you at 6 p.m.
Take my mind.